does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure.
こんにちは、小島秀夫です。ポッドキャストプログラム、Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
Hello, I'm Hideo Kojima, here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. We have a special guest with us today, so my partner will be, as always, this guy in Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kojima. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Keighley, producer of the Game Awards, and TGA The Jeff's Answer. Mr. Kojima, as always, it's such a pleasure emceeing Brain Structure with you. And today, we have a very special guest who is the director of 2022's top hit movie, Top Gun Maverick. I've known him for a long time. He got his start, as you're about to hear, working actually in the video game world, doing a bunch of classic video game commercials. And of course, he's gone on to direct some incredible films, Mr. Joseph Kosinski. So without further ado, let's dive into this conversation. Joe, welcome to Brain Structure.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
僕もトップガン、マーベリック3回見たんで。
I saw Top Gun Maverick 3 times, and I'm gonna go see it some more since it's still playing. I ordered the Blu-ray already too. I also love Tron Legacy and Oblivion.
Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Top Gun is one of those things where you could have never predicted it, you know, and obviously I'm just thrilled and very grateful that people are seeing it on the big screen multiple times, which is, you know, what we designed it and hoped how it would be seen. And yeah, it's been a really fun to watch that film kind of, you know, get a life of its own.
今の世代って
The current generation watches stuff like YouTube on smartphones or computer screens, and many people have stopped watching TV too. I think most of them only ever look through a small frame, a small screen, even movies. I'll bet those people were really shocked after seeing Maverick at the movie theater. Our generation grew up with movies, so seeing this movie on the big screen reaffirmed our love of movie theaters. But for the younger, smartphone generation, I don't think they've experienced anything like it. In video games, you become the player and enter the world that way. And in movies, you either follow the back of the protagonist's head or through the lens of the cameraman. With smartphones or tablets, you can't immerse yourself into that small rectangular frame. But screens at the movie theater make you feel like you're walking 2 or 3 steps into the screen, giving you a realistic simulation experience. And with Maverick, there's IMAX and Dolby Atmos too, so what you're seeing is actually a screen, but it feels like you can see the world around you. That realistic presence must have taken that generation by surprise.
Yeah, I don't think there is any replacement for the big screen experience, you know. Certainly seeing a story on a 60-foot wide screen that fills your peripheral vision is a different experience than looking at it on something in your hand. The sound that you get when you go to a great theater, the kind of sound that shakes you, you know, in your belly, that kind of power, that kind of sound pressure, you're never going to get through a pair of headphones or an iPhone speaker. But I think most importantly, the most powerful thing that cinema can do is the collective experience of watching it with a group of people and feeling the way that a laugh can spread through a crowd, or you can hear someone crying during an emotional scene near you. That's the kind of thing that no technology that you hold in your hand can replace, and that's something that cinema will always have, and something that we just need to keep making content for. And that's what I'm excited about, is, you know, thinking about stories that need to be told and seen on the biggest screen possible, and keep that, you know, form of entertainment alive and thriving.
36年前
Well, what's amazing about this movie is the first one was 36 years ago, which is actually the same year that I entered the game industry. But it's not really a remake, although it can be considered a remake. And it's a sequel, but you can also say that it isn't. And the most remarkable thing about it is that the people who saw the first Top Gun are now married with kids, and they probably took their kids to see Maverick. There's the parent generation who first saw Top Gun and then watched Maverick, and there's the generation of kids after that who saw Maverick first and then went back to watch Top Gun. Times have changed so much so quickly. Our world, our culture is different now. Yet, one movie over a span of 36 years has been reborn and has succeeded in reconnecting families, generations, and family values. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, the themes in the film are very universal. You know, it's a story about friendship. It's about sacrifice. It's about competition. And these are things that I think everyone can relate to in their lives. We just, you know, have the opportunity to tell this story in a world that few people get to ever experience. And, you know, the world of being a naval aviator and strapping yourself into one of these incredible machines that allows you to, you know, propel yourself across the heavens at, you know, twice the speed of sound or 10 times the speed of sound if you know, talking about the Dark Star sequence. And that's what movies can do. You know, they can put you in the point of view of someone who's doing something extraordinary and give you a window into a world that you'll never ever get to see with your own eyes, but make you feel like you're there. And if you can tell an emotional story at the same time, is the challenge and why, you know, I love my job.
Wait, Joe, when you talk a little bit about, you know, those game commercials, because I think it's such an interesting entry point. And then once you did Mad World, I think then you know, kind of became known as the guy that did these amazing game commercials, and that led to, you know, Halo and Destiny and, you know, a bunch of others. How did that happen for you? Like, what appealed to you about doing those gaming commercials back then?
I mean, I think the appeal of, well, first of all, I just wanted a job. Okay, I'd moved to Los Angeles in 2005, wanting to work as a director, and I spent the first year and a half pitching on project after project, and I got none of them. I think I pitched on 27 commercials and I got 0. So I was desperate to just, you know, work on something. And I was very lucky in that David Fincher was originally going to be the director for Gears of War, but just as he was going to go into production, his movie Zodiac was greenlit, so he was unable to do it. And you know, I'm very thankful to David, because what he did was he went to the agency and said, "You got to give Joe a chance. You know, this guy's young and hungry, and you know, based on the work he's done before, I think he can pull this off for you." And so I had an opportunity to make it, and you know, what I loved about it was telling a story, and it had emotion to it. It wasn't just a commercial about sawing aliens in half and blowing them away. There was a real pathos to this character and a loneliness to it, and that I thought was really powerful if we could capture that. And so for me, it was an opportunity to make a mini movie. That's how I approached it. And I shot it like one, you know, using kind of the language of cinema in a video game engine. And once that came out, you know, I had my break and had an opportunity to make another one. So then Halo 3 Starry Night was the same agency, and they gave me a shot at doing that. And I've been busy ever since, basically, you know. But it took it took a year and a half to get that first opportunity. So I always tell that to people who are asking how to break in, and and I always say it's really hard at the beginning. The first job's the hardest one to get, but once you have that opportunity, you have to grab hold of it and really take advantage of it and make the most of it. So I still believe that today. Every project I work on, I make it like it's going to be the last thing I ever get to do. You got to put that much effort into everything, because you just don't know, what if there's going to be another one after it.
No, they were great commercials, and I thought, as you said, you captured an emotion sort of the game experience. I think a lot of what you were doing is, I think, a lot similar to Hideo, where he has such a cinematic angle to a lot of his games, right, and takes the control away from the player, but you get an experience and that kind of immerses you back in. But I thought when you were like Starry Night, it just captured the emotion of Halo so well, and it wasn't using gameplay at all, right? And I think now sometimes a lot of games just go right to the gameplay, and you're able to kind of do something that was inspired by the game. Were those I imagine you were pretty collaborative with the game creators when you were building those too?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember on Gears of War working with Cliffy B, who was, I think, one of the lead creatives on that game, and spending time with him, and because the game company is always interested in making sure that the spirit and the look of the game is being represented. And I'm coming in as an outsider trying to tell a story, and so it's important that there's a dialogue there. But the most important thing is that you're capturing the tone, even if it doesn't look exactly like the game, or it's like I said, on Gears of War, we lit it differently than the game. The tone, the feeling, the emotion, that's the most important thing to capture and get right. And so I think me coming as kind of an outsider and not being so deep in the game world is kind of an advantage as a director for these commercials I did, because I come at it as more of a storyteller or a filmmaker, imagining what the movie version of that game would look and feel like. And yeah, it's just, for me, gaming has always been a great world to play in, because you can do things in gaming commercials that you can't do in a car commercial, or whatever else is being sold on television. Gaming trailers and commercials, you can really tell a story and evoke an emotion and take people to another world in a way that movies do. So that's where I think I was drawn to that at the beginning of my career, and kind of led to, those two commercials, Gears of War and Halo, were what really got me Tron Legacy. That got me the opportunity to make a teaser trailer for Tron Legacy before there was a script, and that was the thing we showed at Comic-Con in 2008, was essentially me making a mini trailer or commercial for a movie that didn't exist yet.
クリフィー B は映画好きなんで、すごいいい化学反応だったと思うんですけど。
Cliffy B has a passion for movies too, so I'm sure you guys had a great connection there. I haven't seen him in a while, maybe 4 or 5 years. He reached out to me not too long ago on Twitter saying, I want to meet up. But anyways, so Joe, you got your start with CG and moved on to games and using VFX, and now you're making movies like Top Gun, where you're filming actual fighter aircrafts in the sky. What are you feeling right now, from your perspective, having seen things from a digital standpoint? I call digital magic, but there are some old-fashioned directors who dislike digital, and I think that sentiment may be on the rise right now. But you can do both. You're kind of in the middle. So, what are your thoughts? We were talking a bit before we started recording this, but I think movies and games are totally different, like 180 degrees different. But I believe that the gap between the two will shrink over time. I would love to hear what you think about that.
Well, even on my early CG work, the goal, or what I was trying to do, is always to make it feel as photographed as possible. So when I was doing my own CGI work, it was great, because I was teaching myself about all the things that make an image feel like something real. So it's lighting, global illumination, depth of field, how the camera moves, All those qualities I was trying to work into the CGI work to make it feel real, and it really taught me a lot about the physical world of cameras and lighting and atmosphere and all those kind of tiny details that tell the human brain that what you're looking at is real and not a construction. So I think that's why I'm so drawn to capturing things in camera, because it allows me to get things for free that I know are very, very, very difficult to get on the digital side. So on the other hand, I know that there are things that you can never photograph for either because it doesn't exist and it's only exists in your imagination, or because filming it would be so dangerous that you'd be putting people's lives at risk, which was the case with Top Gun. So having a background in digital, I think, has allowed me to shoot live action material and integrate digital elements into it in a way that people aren't able to spot. And therefore the illusion remains intact. And therefore they're not thinking about whether or not something's real. They're just following a story and getting emotionally involved because they never question it. And I think that is the power of digital tools, is the magic trick of cinema, in that what you're seeing all feels real, and therefore what's happening on screen makes you feel something authentic and something that really moves you.
CG であれば
I see. So as you know, with CG, you can shoot in one take, regardless of what camera you're using. For example, Peter Jackson had a difficult time filming the scene where they zoom in on the inside of an airplane and go through the window. But now we could easily do that with CG. But also, now that we have drones, anything that was only possible with CG can be done with a real camera. I think drones will continue to improve, and they'll be able to handle all kinds of movements. So in 20 or 30 years, Joe, you can create a Top Gun Maverick sequel, and if you use a drone, you could probably film an actual live action dogfight. But what I want to say is, it's not a matter of digital or analog. It's about sensibility. It's just a difference of whether you use digital means or old-fashioned means to express what you're trying to convey. I make games, and games are completely digital. But the resolution is so small and detailed that, just as you mentioned earlier, if I try to create a character from scratch, it will look really fake. And that's why we do performance captures with actors and scan them. So, as we go along, it's no longer going to be digital versus analog. Those are just elements. I think we're in an era where it's up to the creators to decide what to use.
I agree. First of all, there's nothing more important than a great idea or something that you can imagine that no one else has ever thought of before. Those override any technique. Also, I think there is no special effect that's greater than a great performance from an actor. That ultimately supersedes any technical innovation that exists. So the focus should always be on story and ideas and emotion, and then the technique or the technology should always evolve from that. And I think that's maybe where people sometimes make the mistake is they put technique first, and technique should always support the idea or the story that you're trying to tell.
ちょっとこれだけ言いたかったんですが、トロンレガシー。
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to tell you. You know how you made Jeff Bridges younger in Tron Legacy? That's only possible because it's digital. You made an analog physical actor younger using digital techniques. You sort of went beyond time. I thought that it took a lot of courage to do that.
行為だと思うんですけど。
But I saw that and did something similar in Death Stranding. The actress, Lindsay Wagner from The Bionic Woman, was my favorite actress growing up. So I wanted her in the game, and when I saw Jeff Bridges, I thought about doing the same thing with Lindsay. And that's exactly what I did in Death Stranding.
デスストでやった。
I just wanted to tell you that.
Wow, thank you. Well, yeah, certainly on Tron, we pushed forward in so many different technologies at the same time. Definitely stretched boundaries of, I think, what I probably should have done on one movie, between shooting it for real in 3D, shooting it with lit suits, and then creating a completely digital character. But to me, Tron was the kind of film and story that demanded an ambitious approach. And although I don't think we succeeded in every aspect on every shot, I am proud of the fact that we really went for it and tried to push the boundary of what was possible, and in doing so, I think we did create something really unique that I'm very proud of. 12 years later.
Oh, well, no, I think I wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about this coming merger of gaming and film, and we've talked about Unreal Engine and some of the technologies. And Joe, you obviously came out of the digital world, making analog films, and Hideo, you're doing digital games, but thinking sort of cinemagraphically about sort of how you're going to build things. Joe, do you think of do you have stories that you want to tell interactively, or how do you feel like what you're doing in the next phase of your career, do you think we'll ever intersect with sort of gaming or using gaming technology in some way around, or build, to an amazing film, but have a gaming extension, or do you think about that when you're thinking of your new worlds?
I don't start thinking about kind of the technology. I think about what's the story I want to tell, and then figure out, is there a technology that needs to be invented or utilized to tell it appropriately? I'm working on a racing film right now, and we're utilizing some really cool technology to innovate in that space in a way that's really exciting to me. I also have, in working with my designers on projects, I found that the real-time technology really can help aid the creative process when designing, whether you're designing environments or designing vehicles. The ability to kind of stand around an object, or take a look at it, or walk through a set before it's built, so you can experience what it's going to look like to stand in it and film in it. That's something that I think is going to be really useful for my job, and so that's what I'm interested in, kind of leveraging the real-time technology for. But ultimately, my greatest pleasure is going to real locations and shooting things with real cameras. That's what I get most excited about. So, to me, that's kind of the purest form of filmmaking.
はい。ジョーさん、
Yes, so Joe, I do everything digitally, as I told you. Although I shoot real actors in capture sessions and scan materials, and the voices are real people too, it all becomes digital in the end. And when it's digital, you can change things daily, like adding tiny details onto a character. It's never ending. I'll bet you will face similar problems down the line with your future projects. We, as human beings, may be satisfied with what we created that day, but by the following day, we may feel differently and are no longer content. If it's analog, you can't go back and make changes, but digital allows you to do just that. You end up constantly doing this. So it becomes difficult to draw the line and say, stop. So in that sense, in the world of streaming, creators can change things every day and stream new content. That would end up being like George Lucas, but I suppose something like this will become possible. Although, I don't think I would recommend it.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I think, it's you certainly need to take your creative process to an endpoint where you feel like you're happy with it. But I also feel it's important to not dwell and always look forward towards the next thing. It's just, I think it's a healthier process to kind of take on a new challenge. For me, the filmmaking process and doing something new every 2 years is a cycle that I really like. I like leaving projects behind. I don't watch the movies I've made usually after I've made them, because for me, you need to kind of release it, let go, and start on something new. I think that's a healthy way. So yeah, I'm hoping not to go back and retouch the movies I've done before. That would, Except for maybe one shot in Tron Legacy I'd like to change, but otherwise everything else.
ものづくりって
Yeah, I agree. I think that creating things is a means to say goodbye to your past self. So I think what you're saying is exactly right. In the gaming industry right now, people won't let it go after you've made one thing. We're connected digitally, and making edits after edits after edits is now possible, so it's quite a difficult situation. You receive feedback from users, and so you have to continue making corrections, including downloadable contents. And users expect and demand that from you.
That is tricky. Yeah, when you start taking direction from your, from your viewers or your users, and I could see that could be a really good, positive thing, if you enjoy that, or it could be a negative thing in that you can never walk away from something. But I think I imagine you have the ability and power to stop that process if you want and move on anytime you want. And that's just something, I guess it's a personal decision.
Awesome. Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Hideo and Joe. Talk to you again soon.
Yeah, Hideo, thank you so much for setting this up. It's an honor to meet you, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person later this year.
いや、あれ
Thank you so much. Yes, let's meet up if we can.
さて早くもエンディングのお時間となりました。
It's time to wrap up the episode.
That's right, Hideo, and it was so great to have Joe with us. I worked with him a little bit, probably about a decade ago, when he was doing Tron Legacy, and we did something at the Video Game Awards with him and Olivia Wilde, which was really fun. And I always admired how he was able to get Daft Punk to do the soundtrack for that movie. Joe is, as you heard, was sort of in the visual effects world and now moved into the, obviously the film world, and Top Gun, one of my favorite movies of the year. So it was so great to have you two talk with each other. So another great brain structure.
ということで、来週の秀夫小島プレゼンツ
We'll see you again on next week's Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
さようなら。
Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure is a production by Spotify Studios in association with Kojima Productions and Fam Inc. TGA, the Jeff's Answer MC, Jeff Keighley. Narrator, Owen Maki. Music, Silent Poets. Visual design, Mechikuro. Producer, Hiro Furuki. Director, Kohei Takizawa. Executive producer at Spotify, Asami Sekine. Special thanks to Kojima Productions, Ayako Terashima, Masafumi Chiba, Miki Suga, and Aki Saito. Hosted by Hideo Kojima.
It was so fun to hear Mr. Kosinski talk about movies and his involvement with the video game industry. I think I'll watch Top Gun Maverick again, this time on Blu-ray. Coming up next week, Hideo Kojima will announce his top 12 mystery books of this year for his book fair, Hideo Mysteries 2022. He'll talk about each book and why he loved it. Stay tuned.
Where does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure.
はい、こんにちは小島秀夫です。ポッドキャストプログラム、秀夫小島プレゼンツ、 ブレインストラクチャー。
Hello, I'm Hideo Kojima here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Today, I'm going to introduce a list of the 12 books that made it into this year's Hideo Kojima's Mystery Golden Dozen, as discussed in episode 8 of the podcast.
なので、
And I'm joined by two guests today.
はい、よろしくお願いします。早川書房の塩沢義弘と申します。
Hello, great to be here. I am Yoshihiro Shiozawa from Hayakawa Publishing.
塩沢さんのツイッター皆さんフォローしてください。
Everyone, please go follow Mr. Shiozawa on Twitter. He posts his thoughts on proofs or manuscripts while he's still reviewing them. Definitely worth checking out.
ああ、そうですね。そうです
Yes, that's right.
And he's never wrong, so yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to today. And actually, since I haven't been able to read too many mysteries lately, I've brought a man who has read every translated mystery novel.
はい、よろしくお願いします。翻訳ミステリーはすべて読んでいる男こと、早川書房
Hello, my name is Mikiya Idomoto, editor in Hayakawa Publishing's mystery department and the man who has read every translated mystery novel. Thank you for having me today.
はい、よろしくお願いします。
Thank you very much. We met just the other day, right?
そうですね。
Yes, we did. I'm Idomoto.
井戸本会議。
As in Itobata, like gossiping? That's not quite right, is it?
No, it isn't.
はい、今日はじゃあ強力な助っ人をお二人という。
Alright, well, I have these two very reliable partners with me today, so let's get started. First off, I'm sure some of you are probably wondering what Hideo's Mysteries is. This time of year, you may see a name similar to that title. Mr. Shiozawa, since you are the founder of this idea, do you mind introducing it for us?
発案者と言っていただいてるん
Well,
ですけど
you've just given me credit as the founder, but that's not the case. I think it was the Umeda location of the Kinokuniya company, actually. And well, everyone is well aware that Mr. Kojima writes a lot of commentary for book covers. When Mr. Kojima recommends a book, especially a mystery novel, you know it's going to be good. And the people at the bookstore really take that into consideration.
もうだって、
That store is my childhood.
そうですよね。
Yeah, so the bookstore clerk started saying, I wonder if Mr. Kojima will let us put together a book fair of his best mystery selections of the year.
ありがたい話です。
I'm really thankful. Thanks, Kinokuniya.
まあ、そういうことで、
And so last year, we had a discussion and had you pick out 12 books. After that, we got the support from the other publishers and made it into this big thing.
はい、そこは塩沢さんのすごいところ。
Yes, and that's the amazing thing about Mr. Shiozawa. The books I had selected weren't all from Hayakawa Publishing, and I wasn't sure if that was going to work out or not. Well, you know, I've done a Hayakawa book fair a number of times, right? So I thought maybe I have to choose options from Hayakawa Publishing's books.
さんの中から選ばなあかんのかなと思って。
I knew there were other publishers in the mix, but you guys made it work.
実はかなり大変ですけどね。
Yes, it was quite a challenge, to be honest.
この後発表するんですけど、
Yeah, I'll bet. So in a bit, I'm going to introduce a selection from Hideo's Mysteries, but it was really hard to pick. I kept thinking about whether a big publishing company was included or not. That's the tricky part, right? Anyways, I selected 12 books because it's the golden dozen. Originally, I was writing Hideo's Mysteries as a joke on Twitter, kind of like this mystery from the book fair. This mystery is amazing. There are quite a few mystery book fairs at bookstores this time of the year.
はい。
Yeah.
そうですね。
Yes, there are.
でそんな中で僕が
And so, in the wake of all these other fairs, I thought the bookstores wouldn't be interested in Hideo's Mysteries. But many of them have set up a corner for it in their store, so I'm very grateful.
そうですね。なかなかこ
And
う、
there are very few fairs like this that feature selections by only one individual.
まあ実は
Actually, I was approached with an offer to do this mystery this year. But when I checked in with Mr. Shiozawa, he said they were planning on doing another Hideo Mysteries again this year. So I was like, all right then. And I turned the other offer down.
ああ、そうだったんですね。
Oh, really?
当然、
Yeah. Also, I think many of my selections will overlap with the titles in this mystery. I picked the ones that seem like it would get selected, but maybe won't make it in. I'll read off the list in a second. But I should mention, I haven't read very many books this year, so I'm not in a position where I can say much.
積み本が猛烈に。
I have a huge stack of books to read. Probably around 250 or so.
わあ、すごいですね。
Wow, that's amazing.
お読みになられたのが100
And you've read about 100 or so?
150ぐらいかな。
Probably around 150.
That's what I figured.
I started panicking and read a bunch right before the deadline. You definitely shouldn't do that. It's like I'm reading them just so I can make my selection.
そうですね、そうですね。
Ah, I see, I see.
ちょっとじっくり読めない。
I can't really read them at a leisurely pace.
Yeah, well, should we get started?
Yes, let's do it.
はい。
今年の秀ミス
Let's announce this year's 12 titles from Hideo's Mysteries.
で、順位付けはしたくない。
I don't want to rank them, so I'm going to be announcing them in the order that I read them or the order that they went on sale.
Okay,
では、発表します。
All right, here we go.
はい、よろしくお願いします
yes, let's begin.
まず、異常、アノマリー。
The first one is The Anomaly by Hervé Tellier. This was Hayakawa Publishing.
ありがとうございます
Thank you very much. I feel like we need to clap.
Yes, let's clap.
これ
This is a red cover, front and back. My comments are on there too. I talked about this one in episode 8 of Brain Structure, so I won't go too deep into it. But this has been my number one, always. This is number one.
もうこれはですね
This book is just wow.
Wow, right? I can't say anything about it though.
No, we really can't. This has sold over 1 million copies in France.
Yeah.
もっと売らなきゃダメだろう
Our president has been saying we need to push this more. So that's why we changed the book cover and we're giving it a sales push.
これは、
I mean, this is gonna sell, right?
いや、おもろいですね。
It's a great read.
But we can't really say why it's so great.
That's right.
一生我慢して読めと。
Just push through the first part. Well, I mean, it really isn't that hard to read the first chapter. But from the second part onwards, it gets crazy. It's so anomalous. You're like, what the heck?
そうですね。何か起こってる。
Yeah, you're like, I think something's happening, but I don't know what it is.
はい。これぜひ。
Yes, please check it out. This is my number one. If you see it at the bookstore, it'll have a red cover and probably be featured on a flat stack.
順位なし
You said you didn't want to rank your titles. So, is it okay to say this is number one?
これはもう読んだ時から。
This is seriously number one. I knew it from the moment I read it that it was going to be number one.
なるほど、なるほど。
I see.
At that time, nobody else was reading it.
これは結構売れましたよね。
But it sold pretty well, right? Slowly but surely, sales have gone up.
そうですねそうですね
Yes, it has. Thank you.
ちょっと異常なぐらい売れてま
Well,
す。
that makes me happy. I want this to sell anomalously well.
そうですね。
Absolutely.
じゃあこれは1位という
So this is number one.
これ1です。
Yes, number one.
Alrighty then. Thank you.
After this one, I'm not ranking any of the others.
Okay.
次、黒き荒野の果て。
Next is Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. This one was published by HarperCollins Japan. Wasn't this amazing?
これ、すごいですね。
It really was.
So,
これ一冊ずつこう
Wait, are we okay to talk about each of these books individually?
大丈夫じゃないと思います。
probably not. But anyways, it's more noir than hard-boiled, and maybe it's not completely mystery either.
そうですね。犯罪小説。
Yes, more of a crime novel.
Amongst noir mystery novels, this one is probably my number one.
これはちょっと読むべき。
Everyone should read this. I didn't know this author before, but I started following him.
これ新人
Is he a new author?
一応これが2作目になるんですけど。
Blacktop Wasteland is actually his second novel. He's quite popular back in the US.
これはやばいと思います。
This book was really something. This is from Harper Books. And now to the next one. City on Fire. Here he is, Don Winslow. This is his most recent book. This is also HarperCollins Japan. I actually know Don Winslow, but apparently this is his last book.
そうですねもう
Yes. This is a trilogy, right?
このシリーズで、
Yes, this is a series.
で、3部作の最初の。
This is the first book out of the three.
And when he's done writing them all,
He will put down his pen.
he'll put down his pen.
いやー、それはやめてほしいな。
I really don't want him to.
いや、本当ですよね。まだ書き継いでほしいです。
Me neither. I want him to keep writing.
これはまあ
To put it simply, it's like The Godfather.
Right, with the mafia.
Right. The story is about the mafia. His character development is not very typical. It's kind of like Stephen King. He explains all about a character's roots, like how his parents' parents came to America and all that.
あ、延々書かれてる。
Oh, he writes on forever about that?
うん書かれてるキャラクター
Yes, there are a few characters like that. If you like that kind of thing, then great. It's Don Winslow, so you're definitely going to be entertained.
It's very entertaining.
Yes, I can't say the ending, but a lot of people die.
そうなんですよ。なんか、ほんまに
Yeah, right. You're like, how is this story going to continue after this?
おいやばー思って
Yeah, it's crazy. He's probably going to change the location of the setting.
ああ、なるほど。みんなボロッボロになりま
Ah, I see. I mean, everyone ends up in really bad shape.
これドンさん、次祖父の祈り
So that was Mr. Don Winslow. Next, we have Whatever It Takes. This was written by Michael Z. Lewin, and this was one of the titles in Hayakawa Pocket Mysteries.
Yes.
これまあマイクル・リュウインさんはまあ
Michael Z. Lewin is famous for his other series, but this is a standalone book that he wrote during the COVID pandemic. And to put it simply, it's a story that takes place in a pandemic. You're never told what kind of virus it is. But a pandemic has happened and everybody is living in quarantine. They're provided with food supplies, but there are disputes, so the police are on surveillance.
す。そうですね。はい。
Yes.
おじいちゃんが主人公なんですけど
The main character is an old man. There's also his daughter and his daughter's son. The three of them don't have a place to live, so they sneak into abandoned houses and stuff. They do some bad deeds in order to survive. And this is a story about this family's bond, but it's almost unbearable.
It really is.
It's just so poetic. Oh, and the main character doesn't have a name.
そうですね。一行も出てこないですね。
No. His name doesn't appear anywhere.
でそこに犬が加わって
Later, there's a dog and also a girl who's about the same age as the son, and they end up doing some almost criminal things to survive, in order to strengthen their family ties and keep on surviving. The way he writes is different than a lot of other books. He doesn't write out the emotions, but you can understand them from the dialogue. There are finely detailed distinctions of emotions. It's really easy to read. It's almost entirely just dialogue.
そうですね。短いながらも結構丁寧に。
Yes. And even though it's short, each episode is written very neatly.
これはねちょっと読んだら
If anybody who is writing a novel reads this, they will probably give up writing.
こんなもんに勝てるかと
They'll be like, there's no way I can compete with this.
はい次優等生は
Okay, next is Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, published by Tokyo Sogensha. People probably don't need to be told to go read this,
ね去年の自由研究の向かない
right? Her novel, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, was a big success last year, too.
そうですね。
That's right.
This is a sequel to that, and it starts at the beginning of the trial from the first book.
Yes, it does.
なんでワンを読みたい人は
So for anyone who wants to read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, they should not start with this book.
そうなんですね。
Right.
But if you don't want to read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, you can start with this one.
ただねこれ読んだら
But if you read this, you're definitely going to want to go back and read the first book. Everything is revealed through the trial, including who the culprit is.
誰が犯人
まあそうです。そうですよね。当然そうで
Of
す。
course it is.
So if you want to read this book, I recommend starting with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder.
そうですね。読んだ方が。
Yes, I agree.
これもうつるんと読みますね
This one is really easy to read too.
It is.
向こうであれだ一応ヤングアダ
In
ル
the
ト
UK, it's actually marketed as a young adult genre.
そうなんです。ヤングアダルト。
Yes, it's sold as a young adult novel.
面白いのはヤングアダルトです
Young adult novels are great. There are a lot of female authors who write young adult or novel adaptations or sequels to other people's works. Like Don Winslow did that with Satori. I mean, it's possible to make an outstanding book using difficult words, and for books, that's fine, but that's not really the trend as of late.
そうですね。
No, it isn't.
やっぱりこう分かりやすくて
Books that are popular nowadays are easy to understand, interesting, and tickles your fancy. The book I'm going to introduce next is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, published by Tokyo Sogensha. This one is also more like young adult, right?
そうですね。
Yes, I would say so.
これも去年前作
Last year, her book, His and Hers, was also a hit, so she's become a regular. Alice Feeney. This one is also an easy read, so please check it out. Next, we have The Apollo Murders by Chris Hadfield, published by Hayakawa Publishing.
Yes.
Yep.
これは売れてほしい
I really want this one to sell well. This one is a science fiction novel, but also a mystery, so I added it to the list.
I agree.
実はSF
I actually had a lot of sci-fi works on the list, but this is Hideo's mystery, but I kept this one in.
I see.
This one will do well on its own, even if I don't say anything about it. So I think it'll be okay. This one was quite something.
これは著者があれですよね。
The author of this book is a former astronaut, right?
もう
Yes, I actually received a message from him on Twitter. He said,
ヒデオサンキューできます
well, this is his first book. I can't believe he wrote something this good his first time around.
すごいですよね。
Amazing, right?
うんすごいですねもう
It really is. I have high hopes for him.
かなり架空の歴史での、
He
ね
built up a fictitious story and wrote stuff about international conflict, right?
Yeah. The stuff about Apollo 18 isn't entirely made up either.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
なかったわけじゃない
It's not like Apollo 18 never existed. They stopped it midway. So Chris Hadfield wrote a what if story about it. I definitely want everyone to read this. Science fiction fans too. The cover is awesome. It's really cool. Kudos to Hayakawa Publishing.
It is, isn't it?
Thank you.
続きまして我ら闇より天を見る
The next one is We Begin at the End. Yes?
はい。
Yes.
Written by Chris Whitaker, Hayakawa Publishing. This book was really something. I think it'll become a lot of people's number one book.
そうだったな。
That would be great.
これは読んでほしいですね
I want people to read this.
これはなんと
Actually, Mr. Itomoto was in charge of this book.
私が、
Yes, I was.
The cover is great.
ありがとうございます。頑張りました。
Thank you. We worked hard on it.
これはまあ黙ってても売れますね
This will sell on its own. I don't have to say anything. Yeah, I think this will rank high on this mysteries list too.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
Well, what can I say? It takes place in Montana. American mystery literature has very similar elements.
That's right.
大自然の中の
The fabric of human relationships in the wild outdoors. Attempting to survive in harsh conditions. There are two main characters, an officer and a girl. What was her name?
Duchess.
This girl is amazing.
Yeah, she is.
自分のこと無法者と呼んでて
She calls herself an outlaw. Her mother is an alcoholic, and she also has a younger sister.
弟
A younger brother.
Oh, a brother. And he's around 14 years old.
13 or 14.
でこの子が面倒を見て
So she's taking care of her brother and gets caught up in some trouble, and things take a turn. And this girl is just so positive. I don't know what to say.
Seriously, the story just gets more and more unbearable.
れないというかこうかわいそうな目にどんどん
She just can't catch a break.
You want to just keep cheering for her. You can't put the book down. You have to know what comes next, and of course the ending is really good too. It's a mystery, so I don't want to give too much away, but when I read this, I treated it as a work of literature.
ああなるほど。いやもういろんな
Ah, I see. There are a lot of ways to approach reading this novel. You could see it as a coming-of-age story or a road fiction.
結構アメリカの文学
That's a pretty common trait of American literature. It's high literature, but also has elements of mystery. I think that's nice.
Very. I hope we can publish more like this.
Everyone, please read this. I think if you buy it, you'll hold on to it forever.
そうですね。
I agree.
はい、次はですね
Okay, next one. This is the only Japanese novel that made it in. Principle by Kyo Nagaura. I actually hadn't read anything by Mr. Nagaura before. I was going to buy Revolver Lily, but ended up not getting it, and then I was going to get Underdogs and didn't buy that either. And now I finally bought one.
あれですね、ここ数年かなり
He's made quite a name for himself these past few years in the noir adventure genre.
歴史もので
I picked up this book thinking it would be a historical genre, similar to Yoichi Funado's works. It's set in the dark underworld of Japan and the Yakuza after the war. The daughter of the head of the Yakuza was a teacher, but when her father dies, she ends up taking over the syndicate. And here I was, thinking it would be like sailor suit and machine gun.
もう冒頭すごいですよね、血みどろの。
The beginning was crazy, so gory.
They don't hold back at all.
あ、でもね、
But after that, it became more like a melodrama, like the way the characters are written. It's a subtle balance, I think, especially considering the conclusion at the end. I think for people who aren't big into history or may not have learned about post-war in school, will enjoy it. There are many names in here of famous historical figures or celebrities, but they're slightly different. That was kind of nice. It's easy to understand. I don't know how much of it is fiction or if they're pseudonyms, but I think it was very well written with balance.
そうですね。
Yes, it was.
続きまして、メイドの
Next, we have The Maid by Nita Prose. This was published by Futami Shobo. They novelized my beloved series Columbo as part of their label, Thorough Books.
そういうことだったんですね。
Oh, is that right?
これも
This is also sort of young adult-ish, right?
そうですね、これも YA として。
Yes, I believe this book was published as a young adult novel.
こういう小説が一番
I think these kinds of novels are the best. The main character, Molly, her character setting is great. It can really be read as a character novel. She lives with her grandmother, and they are quite poor. Then her grandmother dies, and she goes to work as a hotel maid. She develops a relationship with a customer in a particular room, where a dead body is later discovered, and Molly becomes involved. It's a mystery, but rather than using mystery gimmicks and trying to make you guess who the culprit is, it focuses more on the girl's character. You become really emotionally involved with her. It's similar to We Begin at the end. You really start rooting for Molly, but she's a bit of an odd character, right?
そうなんですよね。ちょっと変わってるんですよね。
Yeah, you're right. She is a bit odd.
どう変なんですか？
What do you mean by odd?
ちょっと他人とコミュニケーションを取るの。
She's not very good at communicating with people. Sometimes she says exactly what she's thinking without a filter. And on the other hand, sometimes she isn't able to say anything at all. People tend to misunderstand her.
モリーちゃんは
Molly is just a little bit clumsy at life. She was raised by her grandmother, so she holds some values that are different from her generation. Things don't go over well, and so as a reader, you become emotionally invested. And she ends up in imminent danger at one point. Watching her overcome these obstacles makes you very excited.
彼女の周りに
And the side characters are really charming, like the doorman who keeps watch over her from a distance.
Yeah, the doorman.
Her coworker was great too.
ちょっと構造的には80年代の
It's structured kind of like an 80s movie. It looks like something that would appear on World Masterpiece Theater. The character is very modern. They're probably going to make this into a movie for sure. Isn't that plan already in the works?
そうですね、映像が決まってます。
Yes, it has. It's been signed for a movie.
これも読んでほしいです
I want everyone to read this too.
It is very good.
And it's an easy read too. I think girls will especially enjoy this.
I agree. It's something I really want young people to read.
It's selling pretty well in the US, right?
そうです。Amazon で、ベスト。
Yes, it was number one on Amazon's best sellers for the year, and it was also made number one on the New York Times bestseller list.
なんで今その YA とかそのデ
These
ジタル
days,
機器とか
young adult novels and digital books take the number one prize, and my generation is old, so you think we wouldn't like books like that. But that's not the case. It's really well written. Well-established literary authors will need to step it up. Let's stop there. I'm going to offend some of the people I know.
付き合いがあると思う
Next up, we have another hit from a regular. A Line to Kill by Anthony Horowitz, published by Tokyo Sogensha.
そうですね。
Yes,
どうすんですか今年も
What are we gonna do if this takes first place again this year?
いやー1位じゃないですか
It will, won't it? I think it'll be number one. This is the one with Horowitz in it.
はい、そうですね。
yeah, the Hawthorne and Horowitz series.
I thought I had enough of his works, but they're so good. Mr. Horowitz was writing James Bond stuff earlier on.
Yeah, the Bond series
And also like Sherlock Holmes.
with Moriarty.
あもう一つでしたよ
That wasn't that great, was it?
ちょっと今一つ
Yeah, you could say that.
He really transformed as an author.
Yes, with Magpie Murders, it really grabbed you.
なんで化けたの
Why do you say he transformed?
ホロビッチさんもそうですけど、
People like him started off writing novelizations based off of other material or picking up after a different author. They write in a very easy to understand way. And then they add their own ideas into the mix, and that's when they catch their break.
もともとドラマの脚本
He got his start writing screenplay, doing stuff for like the Poirot TV series, so he built up experience there and then came out strong with Magpie Murders.
まあネタ的にもすごいです
I
か
mean,
ら
the plot in that is really something. With Horowitz and Hawthorne, nothing happens until halfway through the book. Usually, you have a dead body in the mix, but instead, you're made to read the development and relationship of these two characters for the longest time.
シリーズものの強さ
That's the strength of a series.
いやこれ多分読ん
But you could start reading from this one too.
確かにここから読めな
That's true. You could get away with jumping in from here.
まあ常連です。で続きまして
Well, he's a regular. The next one is The Curator, written by M.W. Craven. He's also a regular. And this is also published by Hayakawa. What did you think about this book?
いや面白いですよね
Oh, it was great.
これも一番おもろいですよね。
This is the best one, don't you think? I think this one will definitely rank in the other lists, but I can't give anything away.
これもなんか変な
Well, you could call it a strange book too.
You think it's a more difficult read than Horowitz?
I don't know, but I think the character interactions in M.W. Craven's The Curator are quite good.
So, this is the third book in the Washington Post series, and all three of the books are very thick.
They are.
なんちゃらの殺人ばっかりです。
It's always a murder or something, but you'll be fine picking up the series from this book. If you enjoy it, you can go back and read 1 and 2. They're also good. But you might want to start with The Curator first. Well, there were a lot of my usual favorite authors in my 12-book selection, but the ones I kind of went into more detail about, Whatever It Takes, We Begin at the End, and The Maid, are not regulars. Chris Whitaker, he wrote the Missing Children book, right?
はいトールオークスの秘密というのが集英社文庫さん
Yes, Tall Oaks. That was published through Shueisha.
Yes, I thought that was him.
Yep, that's him.
It's good?
It's good.
ということで、12冊
And there we have it, all 12 books. We were originally going to have you pick up just a few of these books, but we got to hear about each one. Starting this November, at the end of the month, you'll be able to find Hideo's Mysteries in bookstores across Japan.
そうですね。
That's right.
Everyone, please go check out your local bookstores.
They should have a big display at Kinokuniya Bookstore in particular.
Yes.
At the Umeda location.
梅田店に行きたいな。
I really like to go check out the Umeda store.
Please do.
まあこのミスとかもありま
And
す
many
し。
places will also have a corner for this mystery fair too. It's nice, isn't it? When you go to a bookstore and it's like a festival.
そうですね
Yeah, it really is.
で本をやっぱり自分で選べない人
I think a
多い
lot of people have a hard time choosing books for themselves. But I think Hideo's mysteries will be laid out on display table, and this mystery too. So just take a quick look around and pick out anything you like. Whether it's the comments on the cover or the title, or you just like the cover design, buy it and try reading it. But make sure you choose it yourself. Don't just borrow one from somebody. I give people recommendations, but you have to be the one to decide which one to read from there. Take responsibility. When you hit the jackpot, you'll be hooked.
そうなんですよね
Absolutely.
でね、ヒデベスの方は、
And with Hideo's Mysteries, there will be commentary written by Mr. Kojima for each book, so you can take those into consideration as well.
まあ読んでほしいっていう。
I wrote those comments because I want people to read the books. But also, after you read the books, you can look back at those comments and understand the meaning behind them. They serve a double
構
purpose.
成というか二段構成。
Double the pleasure. And we also have another announcement.
ヒデメス2020
Yes, for Hideo's Mysteries 2022, we have partnered with this podcast and have created a Brain Structure Podcast original sticker. You can get one at a first-come, first-served basis if you buy a book from the Hideo Mysteries sections of the bookstore. This will go on while supplies last, so if you want one, I recommend going to buy a book ASAP. Stickers.
ステッカー。
なかなかないですよね。
It's not very common to receive stickers at a mystery book fair.
本屋さんがどんどんなくなっていってる。
It's also really sad to see fewer and fewer bookstores in these times.
本当です。
That's so true.
まあデジタルでも。
I mean, digital books are good too, I guess, but it's so fun to pick out books on your own. Of course, the reading part is fun too, but picking out the books, therein lies the fun.
そうですね。書店。
Yes, actually going to the bookstore and browsing.
本屋に行って何があんのかな。
And when you're there, you can be like, what do we have here? Which one should I get? And you only have an allowance of like $15. That whole thing. Was it just me? I used to get super excited when I go up to the cash register like, I'm buying this. These days in Japan, most bookstores have self-checkout and you have to pay on your own. And also with COVID precautions, some places won't put the paper covers on the books for you anymore. You have to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Back in the day, the staff would ask you, would you like us to wrap a cover over the book? And you answer yes.
もうそれだけが。
That was all part of the fun. Paying for the book, getting your change, putting a bookmark in it. I want everyone now to experience that same fun.
Me too.
Yes.
ということで今日の
And there we have it. Our guests today were Mr. Shiozawa and Mr. Idemoto from Hayakawa Publishing. Thank you so much.
ありがとうございまし
ありがとうございま
た。
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
さて続いてはこ
We
ちら
will now move on to our segment featuring game journalist and TV presenter Jeff Keighley in his one-man show, TGA, The Jeff's Answer. What news will he bring us today? Let's hand it over to Jeff.
TGA, The Jeff's Answer.
Hello, everybody. It's Jeff Keighley with another TGA, The Jeff's Answer, and it is TGA time around here, which stands for the Game Awards, which is our annual award show for video games, which will be streaming live on Thursday, December 8th in the United States and Friday, December 9th in the morning in Japan. I work on this show every year, and this is the 9th Game Awards, so I thought this time I'd talk a little bit about what to expect from the show this year. First of all, the nominees have been announced for the Game Awards. They were announced, and we had 31 categories that were announced, including the category of Game of the Year. And the nominees this year for Game of the Year are Elden Ring by From Software, God of War Ragnarok from Sony Santa Monica, Horizon Forbidden West from Guerrilla Games, Stray from Annapurna, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 from Nintendo and Monolith Soft, and A Plague Tale Requiem from Focus and Asobo Studio. A really eclectic, interesting list of games. A lot of people tend to think that Elden Ring or God of War have potentially the best shot at winning Game of the Year, but it's a really eccentric group of games. People weren't sure if it was going to be a good year for games or not, but I really think it ended up being pretty good overall. I was happy to see Stray on the list, which is an independent game starring a cat, and then A Plague Tale Requiem is a big achievement for Focus and Asobo to have their first game ever nominated for Game of the Year, which is a big deal for Focus. The Game Awards this year is going to stream live everywhere. We'll have our orchestra back again, performing the themes from all those games and more. We'll have more musical performances. We'll have special guests. And, of course, we'll have world premieres, new game announcements, and a lot of amazing content created by game developers around the world. The thing that I'm most excited about, the fans will be with us live in the audience for the first time since 2019, so there'll be a great energy in the room, and our team is working incredibly hard on the Game Awards. So that's a quick update on all things Game Awards. I hope you guys get to tune in and check it out. We've been working really hard on this show, and it's going to stream live everywhere. So tune in. Enjoy TGA, and that's it for this week's TGA.
さて早くもエンディングのお時間です。
And now, it's about time to end this episode. I selected 12 books for Hideo's Mysteries, so I hope everyone will take this opportunity to read them, any of them. Also, Brain Structure is continuing to accept messages from our listeners. Please send us ideas for the show, guest suggestions, theme suggestions, or any messages you have for me. Even relationship advice, anything goes. The link to the message form can be found in the Spotify episode description. We're waiting to hear from you. See you again for next week's episode of Hideo Kojima Presents Brain
で
Structure.
はさようなら。
Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure is a production by Spotify Studios in association with Kojima Productions and Fam Inc. TGA, the Jeff's Answer MC, Jeff Keighley. Narrator, Owen Maki. Music, Silent Poets. Visual design, Meiji Kuro. Producer, Hiro Furuki. Director, Kohei Takizawa. Executive producer at Spotify, Asami Sekine. Special thanks to Kojima Productions, Ayako Terashima, Masafumi Chiba, Miki Suga, and Aki Saito. Hosted by Hideo Kojima.
Wow, that made me want to read all 12 books in Hideo's Mysteries. I read The Anomaly, and it was crazy and shocking, actually. We hope you all go to the bookstore to check out Hideo Kojima's selections. Coming up next week, Hideo Kojima will take a deep dive into one of his favorite films of the year. We'll talk about the movie, as well as the musicians Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, who worked on the soundtrack. And we'll play you some of their music too.